Hey there, folks! In this video, we're going to be returning to the case of Chelsea Grimm. When I released my previous video, I felt it was the most comprehensive and accurate piece you could watch on the subject, and in many ways I still feel that way, but there is so much more going on in this case than I anticipated. I know a lot of people had a lot of questions about that last video because I got a lot of emails. If you paid close attention, you probably noticed that throughout the Coconino County investigation, there were a lot of cliffhangers, a lot of leads that were seemingly not followed up on. And so a lot of people asked me, hey, what's going on with this? Wasn't this followed up on? And the only answer I could provide to you would be, I don't know. I only had the information that Coconino County made available to me, and if I were to guess, then I'd have to say that either Coconino County did not do proper follow-ups on a lot of leads, or they chose not to give me all the information they had. Well, after learning a lot more about this case, it's beginning to look like a lot of leads could have been followed up better. The detectives investigating this case have switched a few times with varying degrees of dedication, in my opinion. It's really a bit confusing because some leads they'll follow all the way to the end, and others appear to be missing from the case file entirely. We'll get into that later. The good news is, all of those questions I mentioned previously will be answered in this video, and a lot more. Questions like, was it Chelsea's clothing that was found hanging from a tree on a random ridge in the Kaibab? Or was it actually Chelsea who was seen with her bearded dragon at a restaurant in Phoenix after she disappeared? There have been some significant updates in the search for Chelsea, and progress appears to have been made. Whatever my conclusions were at the end of my last video on this subject, they have been completely changed based on the evidence I'll present in this video. To me, the evidence is pointing in a completely new direction. I want to make sure that anyone who goes into the Kaibab National Forest to hunt, hike, woodcut, explore, or whatever, that they're all armed with the latest, most up-to-date knowledge on the case. The Coconino County Sheriff's Office, or CCSO, needs tips and information, whether someone was out there around the time Chelsea disappeared, or even before that, or after. If you see or have seen anything odd or notable while out in this area, it may be worth reporting it to investigators. Also, to the same end, if you even know someone who hunts or woodcuts in the Kaibab, share this video with them. We need to get this information out there as far and as wide as we can if we are going to have any success in finding Chelsea Grimm. One other thing I want to add is that if you have not seen my previous video on Chelsea's case, then I would recommend you watch it. It's not 100% necessary, I just can't cover all those same details in this video because it would be embarrassingly long. So I think it would be helpful to have seen that, but it's not entirely necessary. I'll still cover all the broad strokes in this video, but a lot of the details from the last video will not be included in this addendum. In the first video, I went through the Chelsea Grimm timeline from the perspective of the Coconino Sheriff's investigation into the case. So basically, what they learned and when they learned it. At the end, I wrapped up everything they learned throughout the investigation into the actual timeline, which I think is more coherent, concise, and easier for people to understand. In this video, we are going to begin with that, the actual timeline of events, except there is going to be a lot of new stuff added in. If you're anything like me, you may be good at putting off things like doctor's appointments. Oftentimes, it's only when something goes wrong that you begin to panic and finally start looking around to find a doctor as fast as you can. I can honestly tell you I've done that kind of thing many times, and I'm tired of it. One of the worst parts of that kind of behavior is that when you finally get around to making that appointment, you find out that you can't be seen for weeks or even months in some cases. And if you need to see a specialist, well, good luck with that. And then you spend an afternoon calling around to see if anyone else has an opening that can get you in sooner, but you're stuck on the phone because you're the 20th person in line, which is already not a good sign. You'd think that there would be a better, more efficient way of doing things, and there is. It's called ZocDoc. Now, I know us human beings can often be hesitant to try out new things, but hear me out on this. First of all, ZocDoc is a free website. It is going to cost you nothing to use, and it's only going to make your life easier. ZocDoc will help you find a good doctor, the one that works right for you, and it will help you make your appointment right from the comfort of your own home. No more calling and waiting. ZocDoc has more than 150,000 providers across all 50 states, and it's growing every day, so you'll have plenty of options to choose from. One of my favorite features is the verified patient reviews. If you're looking for a good doctor, you're going to want to know what other people have to say. No more going in blind with a doctor you know nothing about. My other favorite feature is choosing your appointment. Appointments made through ZocDoc are fast. You get to see the doctor's schedule and their availability, so you can choose the time that works best. Oftentimes, they can get you in even on the same day, or typically within just 24 to 72 hours. So why keep doing things the old way when it could be so much easier? So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/Enigma, or you can click the link in the description below to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. So thank you to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. Chelsea Grimm was 32 years old in September of 2023. During her formative years, she lived with her parents in Connecticut along with her siblings. She studied at Pace University, receiving her degree in psychology, and then went to New York University to get her graduate degree in clinical social work. After a stint working for the New York Department of Education, she decided to make a big change and move out to the West Coast, specifically San Diego, California. Here she focused on one of her passions, art. She also acquired a pet bearded dragon named Rosie, whom she kept around at all times. In the period of time leading up to her journey across the country and eventual disappearance, she was living off of Long Branch Avenue in San Diego. She also had a boyfriend by the name of PJ. I've received a lot of information about PJ, and out of fairness to him, we'll just say that he was allegedly into some rather nefarious behavior. Things like drugs, stealing, your average low-level criminal type stuff. When PJ eventually talked to police after Chelsea disappeared, he was next to useless. He called himself Chelsea's fiancé and provided a bunch of timeline information that was verifiably inaccurate. He couldn't even seem to remember an accurate date for when he last saw Chelsea. Prior to her leaving on her trip, we know that the two had argued with each other, and Chelsea had even kicked him out of her house. When PJ was later questioned about this fight, he told authorities that it mostly had to do with issues involving Chelsea's neighbor. Obviously, we don't know if that's true, but PJ said that the neighbor terrorized Chelsea. This neighbor that PJ was referring to is a fella named Ryan, who Chelsea tried to get a restraining order against because she felt that he was looking in on her. Investigators spoke with Ryan and concluded that he was most likely a harmless guy who just had a crush on Chelsea that went a bit too far. Focusing back on PJ, I know many people are aware that he is probably not a very good guy, and I think that leads a lot of people to suspect him. PJ was seriously investigated for any potential involvement in Chelsea's disappearance, but his whereabouts during this time frame are pretty well known because he was being monitored by San Diego PD due to past criminal activity. He also did not have a car at the time. His best mode of transportation was a bicycle. So, while Chelsea's boyfriend PJ and her neighbor Ryan might have raised a few eyebrows with people, both were investigated and no evidence was found that could indicate their involvement in Chelsea's disappearance. So let's keep moving up in the timeline. Sometime after the September 22nd fight with PJ, Chelsea appears to have kicked him out of her home. She may have done this willingly, or it may have been done due to pressure from her landlord since PJ was not on the lease. We know that Chelsea was due to fly out to Connecticut on September 24th to reconnect with her parents on the East Coast, and also to attend a friend's wedding. Right before the flight, Chelsea changed her plans and decided to drive. It appears that much of this decision revolved around her bearded dragon, which she wanted to take with her. So Chelsea went back to her home, she packed up her 2019 Ford EcoSport, and began her cross-country trip on the same day. All indications are that Chelsea fully intended to return. Her home was left in good condition and was still full of her belongings. On September 25th, we have some Instagram posts from Chelsea showing that she was on the road. We also see her bearded dragon and the interior of her vehicle. The decor itself shows off the spiritual side of Chelsea's personality. Overall, it seemed that the trip was heading in a positive direction. On September 26th, Chelsea contacted her parents to tell them that she was in Phoenix and decided not to attend the wedding. At that point, she also said that she would likely stay in the area for a few days to camp and afterwards head back to San Diego. On September 27th, we can begin to get into the details of her movements. At 2:20 p.m., Chelsea stopped at an Arco station in Phoenix to purchase about 6 gallons of gas. At 4:15 p.m., Chelsea stops by a Mexican restaurant called Filiberto's in Wickenburg. At 6:54 p.m., she is still in Wickenburg when she stops by a Shell station and buys 4 gallons of gas. Sometime this evening, Chelsea pulls off onto a service road some 40 minutes away from Seligman, where she camps out for the night. On September 28th, Chelsea arrives in Seligman, and sometime between 11 a.m. and 12:18 p.m., she goes to the Aztec Motel. The motel is owned by a husband and wife duo, and in this instance, Chelsea speaks with the husband. She tries to pay for a room using euros and claims that she is trying to stay off the grid. She also mentions camping off a service road the night prior. The video of this interaction was all over social media shortly after Chelsea disappeared. And just as an FYI, the time on the Ring camera footage you will see in this section is incorrect. After being turned away at the Aztec, and sometime between 12:30 p.m. and 1:30 p.m., Chelsea drove to the Deluxe Inn Motel in Seligman, only about a block away, and spoke with the owner Kim in the parking lot, since the office there didn't open until 3 p.m. Again, Chelsea offered to pay for a room with euros, but once again the proprietor told her she couldn't do it. Kim then referred Chelsea back to the Aztec Motel. At around 2 p.m., Chelsea drove back over to the Aztec and spoke with the other co-owner, a woman named Anna Gonzalez. Anna thought it was strange that Chelsea was trying to pay with euros. She also said that Chelsea seemed out of it, and that Chelsea told her she was having anxiety issues.
Hi. Hi. I was really anxious earlier.
The name of the hotel that he said would take euros?
Oh, I thought you were with them. No, you're right. Sorry. I'm so sorry. What was that?
Your husband said that there was a motel here that would take euros, but I couldn't remember which one he said.
Oh, no, I think he was saying, like, maybe they might consider it. I honestly, I can't imagine he would say yes to this. So what's the question? Today would take euros?
Yeah. I think he said the Luxembourg, but that's not here.
It's the Lux. It's across the street.
Okay.
Across the street.
No.
I don't. Okay. If you want to exchange euros, the next, closest bank is Cayman, which is about 50 minutes on the I-40. And in Cayman they have, I know there's 3 different kinds of banks. There's a Chase Bank. There is but they'll probably have Western Union money exchange there for sure. And you can exchange for your nominal.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, other than that, it's a really small town. So, I mean, there's going to be I can't imagine.
Okay. I'll just double check with them, but then also, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think my husband was just saying maybe they will. I know they take cash.
That's what he said too.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to take coins.
Okay, well maybe I'll just go next time we come back with
You could. I mean,
American money.
It's 50
I can't
now.
believe I ran out of American money.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We don't have a bank.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we only have about 2. So.
But Seligman has 3 bars. Actually, Stockton. You get up on Stockton, you'll just start kind of passing different stuff, like Ross and all this kind of stuff. But there's Chase, there's a National Bank. I don't know what kind of bank you use. Again, not a huge town, but they probably hear them. Okay. Google it. But I would say that is probably the biggest bank. If you want like more options of banks, you would want to see Flagstaff, but that's up the hill, and it's going to be like an hour or so.
Okay.
So Kingman's probably the fastest bank.
Cool. Thank you.
But Kingman has a very large Hispanic population, and so therefore they also have a lot of little Western Union joints that dot that town.
Oh, cool.
And they exchange pesos for sure, so I imagine they probably speak euros.
Okay, cool.
We get a lot of weird, foreign bus routes that come through here, so I imagine they're probably, you wouldn't be the first one, I can't imagine. They come from, Poland and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Bye.
After failing to secure a room in Seligman, Chelsea drives approximately 40 minutes east to Williams, Arizona. At 4:08 p.m., she purchased 2 gallons of gas from a Shell station just west of Williams. At 5:36 p.m., Chelsea is seen parked to the east of Williams Cemetery. Sometime between 5 and 7 p.m., Chelsea is seen entering the Sultana Bar in Williams. The bartender reported that she was acting strange at the time, almost like she wasn't all there or like something was wrong with her. The witness said that she brought in a water bottle and he told her that she could not bring any liquids into the bar with her. Chelsea was compliant with this request. He spoke with Chelsea a few times while she sat at the bar, during which Chelsea mentioned that she was passing through the area and she was alone. He said that later he noticed that Chelsea was crying a little bit and then saw her socializing with some people around her. The witness said that Chelsea did not have any animal with her, but that she said she had been going out to her car occasionally to check on an animal, likely her lizard Rosie. He said that he didn't think Chelsea was drunk or high when he saw her, but he got the impression that she had been experiencing deep sadness. The witness did not see Chelsea leave the bar. He did not see her having any problems with anyone, nor did he see her exchanging information with anyone. While there, he only saw Chelsea interacting with other females. The only thing Chelsea purchased when she stopped at the Sultana Bar was a shot of tequila. At around 7:40 p.m., Williams police officer Blake Hanslick arrives at the cemetery after receiving a call from dispatch about a car being parked there. He arrives to find Chelsea seated in her Ford EcoSport crying. The entire encounter was captured on body camera. The full version can be found in my previous video. Overall, the encounter with Officer Hanslick was very cordial, and he tried to direct her to a place where she could stay the night. Their encounter ends at around 7:50 p.m. I also want to point out that a number of people emailed me to say that I got this part of the timeline wrong because Officer Hanslick's body camera says that time is running in the 8 o'clock hour, but that is actually incorrect. The officer's body cam is off by 1 hour. The actual time was recorded in his written report. Moving on, less than an hour later, at around 8:30 p.m., Chelsea is driving up around 3255 Country Club Road. She pulls into the driveway of that address, a home owned by a woman named Danielle and her husband. They capture her vehicle on cell phone video as Chelsea moves her car off their driveway and into a drainage area.
Don't blind him, he's gonna run into your fence.
The chick.
Both Danielle and her husband run out to speak with Chelsea, who is very apologetic. The couple could smell marijuana emanating from her vehicle, but said she did not appear intoxicated. They help her get her vehicle back onto the driveway and give her directions to head back into town. Afterwards, they watch as Chelsea drives to the end of their driveway and then sits there for a few minutes. She then turns right onto FS 124, the exact opposite direction which they told her to go. At this point, Chelsea is now driving out into the Kaibab National Forest. The next morning, September 29th at 6:11 a.m., a man named David said he saw Chelsea parked 20 yards off the road on FS 124. He said she was driving a white Ford SUV and there was a Hindu male sitting in the driver's seat with the door open. He claims the man was on a cell phone and wearing khaki pants and a white t-shirt. Meanwhile, they say Chelsea was outside the vehicle taking photographs of a nearby elk while wearing a heavy sweater. Right around this same time, two hunters, one named Zach and the other conveniently named Hunter, were arriving in the region for the first day of their hunt. These men also saw Chelsea on the side of the road taking pictures of flowers and taking selfies. The hunters saw nobody else with Chelsea at the time and said that Chelsea was parked so close to the road that they slowed down so to not kick up dust in her face. They provided coordinates for the approximate location of this sighting, which show that she was on Forest Road 124, very near to where it intersects with Forest Road 6. This location matches up with the statements made by the previous witness, David. We should stop and briefly talk about these two sightings because they coincide. Both groups saw Chelsea in the same place, but only one of them claims that there was a Hindu male in the driver's seat. So, one of them is wrong. I think it is most likely that David, the man who supposedly saw the Hindu male, is incorrect here. I'll give you the reasons why I think this. First, you have the contradictory testimony of the hunters who drove by and saw only Chelsea near the vehicle, with no Hindu male in sight. Second, Chelsea was taking pictures at the time of these sightings. These are those photos, and they are time-stamped. None of them show an elk, which is what the witness, David, said she was taking pictures of. Third, These photos show that Chelsea was only a few feet away from the road at most, and not 20 yards off the road as David suggested. On top of all of this, of these pictures that Chelsea took, one of them is actually taken from the driver's seat where the Hindu male would have been sitting, and strangely enough, there is a pair of khaki pants hanging over the door. But these pants are obviously not being worn by a Hindu male. Given this evidence, it seems unlikely to me that the Hindu male thing is actually real, but obviously nothing can be ruled out entirely. Around 8:30 a.m., David is driving by this area again, where FS-124 meets FS-6, and he sees Chelsea's vehicle again. A couple of doors on Chelsea's SUV were open, but David doesn't see anybody around as he drives by. Sometime after this, Chelsea leaves Forest Road 124 and drives onto Forest Road 6 for a while before turning east onto an unnamed and rough road that leads up onto a ridge. Chelsea sets up camp here and takes a video on her cell phone most people have never seen.
That's going to be the fire. That's my desk area that God so beautifully set up for me. That's a little thank you bouquet of flowers to God. Let me take you on into my kitchen. I have to get everything back out of the car. And then the bedroom, I was thinking is going to be up there, but it's really pretty over here. So I was thinking if maybe the ground tarp fit there, but we'll see. Anyway.
It seems like Chelsea planned to camp outside for the night based on what she says there. She points out a couple of spots which could be her bedroom, and says that she might put a ground tarp there. My interpretation is that she is talking about a tarp you put on the ground that is supposed to be underneath your tent. This can help protect the tent from moisture, sharp rocks, sticks, etc. While at this campsite, she also hangs some of her clothing in a nearby tree and photographs it. We don't know why Chelsea went up there or why she chose this location to camp out for the night. The road alone would have given most people quite a bit of pause, as it sounds like more of an off-roading trail than an actual forest road. Either way, Chelsea made it up to this location without significantly damaging her vehicle and spent the night. On the morning of September 30th, Chelsea wakes up, packs most of her things, but leaves her clothing hanging from a tree. It would later be found by a hunter in the area and reported to authorities. The body cam of that interaction is in my last video. After gathering most of her things, she then drives back down the rough road she had taken the day prior. On her way down, she must have hit a rough patch or been going too fast, but she punctured both tires on the right-hand side of her vehicle. Despite the tires deflating, Chelsea continued forward, turning back northward on Forest Road 6 for a few more miles until she ran out of gas and came to a stop near a worn-out road sign. While driving, Chelsea must have known at some point that her tires were flat, as it becomes rather obvious in the way a car handles on the road and also the loud, obnoxious noise it would make. Still, she decided to continue driving further into the Kaibab, and the continued movement on two flats caused significant damage to the rubber tires, which were seriously torn up by the rim of the wheel. At this point, Chelsea is effectively stranded in the Kaibab National Forest. Her car is immobilized, and her cell phone wouldn't have any reception in this area. Around 11 a.m. on this day, a witness named Jonathan is driving through the Kaibab with a friend when he discovers Chelsea and her SUV stuck in the middle of the road. He also notices the tires on the right-hand side of the vehicle are completely blown, and Chelsea likely needs help. They have a brief chat wherein he offers to help her, but she denies any assistance. Jonathan would later tell authorities that Chelsea seemed out of it. After their interaction, Jonathan left and continued on up the road for about 10 minutes before stopping again. The thought of a young woman, stranded and alone in the Kaibab, began to gnaw at him, so he decided to turn around and head back to Chelsea's location. When he got there, he found the SUV exactly as it was when he left, but Chelsea was nowhere to be found. Afterwards, Jonathan left and went on about his planned business. Roughly an hour later, at 12 p.m., a witness named William and his friend are driving up Forest Road 6 when they run into Chelsea's vehicle. Chelsea was still not there at this time, and the two men thought the car might be abandoned. An hour or two after that, sometime between 1 p.m. and 1:50 p.m., an Arizona Fish and Game officer named Karen was driving up Forest Road 6 and found Chelsea standing outside her immobilized vehicle. Officer Karen notices that some of Chelsea's belongings are laying down on the ground behind her car. Chelsea tells her that she has run out of gas, and so Officer Karen gives Chelsea directions so she can walk back to town. She warns Chelsea that going further north will only take her deeper into the Kaibab. The officer says that she offered Chelsea water, snacks, and even a cell phone, but Chelsea denied it all. The only thing Chelsea asked for was the phone number to Lamb Nissan in Prescott, Arizona, because she was interested in their Cash for Clunkers program. Officer Karen gave Chelsea the number, but also told her that Lamb Nissan would not drive all the way out to their location to tow her vehicle for her. Officer Karen then left the area without notifying her dispatch of the interaction. Now let's take a moment and talk about this sighting. If you watched my last video, you'll remember that this is one witness I had a difficult time placing in the timeline because the information the officer supplied didn't make much sense in the grand scheme of things. Basically, the coordinates the officer gave to authorities was for a location further to the south, which doesn't make any sense because Chelsea's car was already immobilized. So at least one of two things was incorrect. Either she got the location wrong or she got the time wrong. To try and fix this issue, I reached out to the officer involved here, and she told me that today she doesn't remember any details of the interaction. She only remembers that she encountered Chelsea near a cattle guard. This is actually helpful information, because there is no cattle guard anywhere near the coordinates that she gave to authorities. On the flip side, it appears to me that there is a cattle guard north of the location of Chelsea's vehicle. So this just reinforces my suspicion that Officer Karen encountered Chelsea where the car was immobilized, despite what she told authorities when she was interviewed. This also makes a lot more sense and helps to clear up the timeline. There's another reason I wanted to stop and talk about this sighting, though, and I really do want to remain respectful here because I appreciate the officer responding to me about this, but this situation looks kind of bad. I would think that the officer must have gotten some sense that Chelsea was stranded. Her tires were completely blown, she had no phone reception, she had no plan. I realize that Chelsea denied any help from the officer, but I would think that this encounter would still strike anyone as a bit strange. I think the least the officer could do would be to notify her own dispatch that she encountered a stranded girl in the Kaibab. I mean, I would describe Chelsea's situation at this moment in the timeline as a borderline emergency, at best. If she can't find a ride out of the Kaibab, then her only option is to walk many miles back to town along roads that she's unfamiliar with. Now, I realize it's easy to criticize decision-making after the fact, but I really think this situation could have been handled a bit better. If dispatch was alerted immediately, maybe they could have sent another officer out there later to check on her, and this tragedy could have been avoided. Sometimes as an officer, I think you have to take some initiative, even if the individual is saying that they're perfectly fine. It's obvious that Chelsea had no real plan. Anyway, we need to get back into the timeline. We are still on September 30th. Chelsea just got herself stranded on Forest Road 6, and 3 different cars have driven by her SUV. 2 offered some form of help, which she denied, and the other one came by while she wasn't there. Let's continue. Around 5:30 to 5:45 p.m., 2 witnesses from earlier in the day, William and his friend, are both driving back home on Forest Road 6 when they run into Chelsea's vehicle again, still in the same spot. The difference is, this time Chelsea is sitting in the driver's seat. William stops and speaks with Chelsea. They have a generally normal conversation, but he does later tell authorities that she was California weird. William offered to help her, but she denied his offer. Chelsea tells him that she is taking photographs in the area and that he missed a really nice sunset. Both William and his friend felt that Chelsea was doing okay and did not appear to be distraught. As the 2 men drove away in their truck, Chelsea would snap a quick photograph of their vehicle through her side view mirror. Sometime shortly after this encounter, as the sun was beginning to set, there were a couple of hunters, one named Zach and the other conveniently named Hunter, who were sitting on a ridge near Perrin Ranch and using binoculars to scan the surrounding terrain for game. One of them saw Chelsea's disabled SUV in the distance off to the west and became frustrated because it was parked right in the area where elk tend to come through. The hunters observed approximately 3 or 4 people around Chelsea's vehicle, and they were carrying things to and from it. The hunters said that these men did not appear to be traveling very far from the vehicle. They also did not see Chelsea. At the time, these hunters had no idea of the significance of what they were seeing. These same hunters had also noticed something else that they felt was possibly relevant to Chelsea's disappearance. During their trip, they recalled seeing a white Chevy Silverado driving around in the area, and they had seen it multiple times over the course of their hunt. It was always driving at a very high rate of speed and sometimes got close to hitting other vehicles parked near the road. The vehicle's occupants were blaring loud music, throwing beer bottles out the window, and occasionally shooting guns into the air. They felt that the truck was so suspicious that they took a couple of photographs of it as it drove around the Kaibab. We can't tell anything about the occupants of the truck using the picture, but one interesting thing to note is that the license plates appear to have been removed. So whoever is driving this truck doesn't wish to be identified by any civilians who might write down a plate number. It also tells me that they must not be very afraid of being seen by any authorities because they were drawing a lot of attention to themselves. It's unlikely that someone would drive a truck like this in a populated area because a police officer is bound to immediately pull this thing over for not having any plates. So, we have this strange truck driving around this region, and its occupants seem to be people who openly flout the law. Now, this sighting was never mentioned in my first video, and you might be asking yourself, wow, that's a really important sighting. Why didn't Coconino County know about it? Apparently, they do know about it, but it's not documented in their case file. That creates a problem for me because here I am presenting this information, but I technically don't have a source to give you. I got this information from a confidential source that I trust, but I hate asking the audience to just believe me on something. In pretty much all my videos, if someone asks me, where did you get this information, I can point you to a legitimate source right away. In this case, I've seen convincing information that this sighting is legitimate. I just don't understand why it's not in the CCSO case file. Even if they thought it was unimportant, it should still be in there. There's tons of random and irrelevant stuff in there. There's documentation of random civilians calling the detectives and asking for the coordinates of Chelsea's vehicle and then getting denied. If that completely irrelevant information is in there, this sighting should be in there too, even if the CCSO thought there was some reason to invalidate it. So I just don't understand it. And since I didn't want you all to just take my word for it, I contacted the lead detective on this case. I outlined this sighting completely and asked if they were aware of it because it's not in their case file. Twice, it was confirmed to me that CCSO knows about this exact sighting. So it's confirmed. They know about it, but it's not in the file for some reason. I didn't bother to continue prying as to why this is. I doubt they would give me an answer anyway, but I didn't want to stop here either. I wanted some more evidence to legitimize this sighting. When I was given this info, I wasn't told the full names of these hunters, but after some digging, I was actually able to figure it out. I know the names of the entire party, which I believe was actually 3 to 4 people, but I think only 2 actually saw anything. They are all experienced hunters, and their Facebooks and Instagrams are all hunting focused. At least one of them is even a hunting guide. So I have confirmed that these are real people. They're hunters, and their social media reveals that they enjoy hunting in the Kaibab. I tried reaching out to them on their various platforms and also on their personal cell phones if I could find their number, but not a single one of them has gotten back to me to say, hey, you're wrong, I wasn't there, or, yep, that was me. It's not entirely unusual because I imagine some people find out who's contacting them and they go, oh man, some random YouTuber, not interested. But I really expected at least one of them would respond. And I won't be showing their faces or revealing their names here because I generally try not to do that with witnesses. It would only serve to irritate them in this case, I'm sure. But ultimately, I trust the source I got this from. I have confirmed the witnesses are all real people. The lead detective on this case confirmed to me that these real people had this sighting and contacted them about it. So I really don't have any doubts about this sighting. I just wonder why it seems like the sheriff doesn't want anyone to know about it. This information is particularly relevant on this day of the timeline, September 30th, 2023, because it is the last day anyone physically saw Chelsea Grimm. After this point, it's only her car that is seen. Chelsea is gone. It seems crazy to me that this sighting could be overlooked given its placement in the timeline at such a pivotal point, quite literally the point at which she disappears. Now, let's move back into the timeline. We are still in the evening of September 30th. At 6:50 p.m., Chelsea's camera takes its final photograph. It is an image from inside her car, facing out through the windshield. The picture appears to be of the road heading in a northwest direction. This picture could have been taken before the 3 to 4 men were seen around her vehicle, or it could have been taken right as she was leaving the area. It's impossible to know for sure. It may not have been taken by her at all, who knows. Either way, this photograph is the last indication of Chelsea's presence in the area. At 11:45 p.m., a hunting guide named Tyne is moving through the region when he sees Chelsea's vehicle stuck in the road. Even though it's the middle of the night, Chelsea is not in her car, confirming she has left the area. Tyne leaves the SUV alone as it seems abandoned. The next day on October 1st, a previous witness, Jonathan, is driving back to his camp when he sees Chelsea's disabled vehicle again. Chelsea is nowhere to be found, but Jonathan exits his truck and looks through the windows of Chelsea's car. He later told authorities that it appeared some items had been removed from the vehicle since he last saw it. Jonathan then left the area. The exact time of this encounter is not known, but it likely occurred sometime in the morning. Around 2 p.m. on this day, a witness named Laura discovers Chelsea's vehicle on Forest Road 6. She assumes that it is abandoned. About 2 miles down the road, she sees a tent on the side of the road. She thinks that this is odd because there are no cars nearby to indicate how the person got there, and also notices a small campfire smoldering outside the tent. Laura calls out to the occupant of the tent, but gets no answer. She would later tell authorities that she sensed someone was inside and they weren't responding to her. Afterward, Laura continued on down the road. I put a lot of emphasis on this sighting in my last video, where I suggested that Chelsea might be the one in this tent. Unfortunately, we have no idea who was in the tent or who it belonged to. Chelsea still had a tent in her vehicle when it was discovered by authorities, but her sleeping bag was missing. Laura also said that the tent looked girl-colored, perhaps suggesting that a girl was using it. The fact is, we just don't know. Some people may bring 2 tents with them on a trip. Most people probably don't. Was Chelsea really planning on doing enough camping to justify a secondary tent? Probably not. Given that hunting season was in full swing, this tent could have belonged to anyone. In addition, with much of the new witness testimony we have, I am now less inclined to think that this tent had anything to do with Chelsea, but it can't be ruled out entirely. Around 3:30 p.m., an off-duty DEA agent was hunting in the region when he encountered Chelsea's vehicle on the road. He took a mental note of it because he thought it would be bizarre for someone to be hunting out of that kind of vehicle. Nor was it in an area known for hiking and camping. He also thought it was strange that the car was blocking the roadway. Nobody was present in or around the vehicle at this time. Around 11 p.m., this same hunter came through the area after killing a bull elk and noticed that Chelsea's SUV had not moved an inch. The hunter looked around for any artificial light in the distance which might indicate someone camping or moving around at night, but he saw nothing. He figured the car must have been abandoned. On October 3rd, a witness by the name of Tasha finds Chelsea's vehicle abandoned on Forest Road 6. At the time, she assumed the driver would probably be coming back to get it with a tow truck or something. On October 4th, Chelsea's parents officially filed a missing persons report with the Phoenix Police Department because that was the last location they knew her to be. On October 5th, a previous witness, Tasha, sees Chelsea's vehicle is still sitting derelict on the road. By this time, she is surprised and concerned that the vehicle hasn't been towed away, so she decides to call the Coconino County Sheriff and report the vehicle's presence. Later, around 8:30 p.m., a Deputy Cortez with the Coconino County Sheriff's Office arrived on scene and observes Chelsea's vehicle. He confirms that the car belongs to Chelsea and that she is missing. After inspecting the exterior of the vehicle and also looking inside through the windows, Deputy Cortez checked the area for tracks but found none. In the end, he found nobody present in the area and began to alert dispatch that a search of the region would be necessary. All of this was recorded on Deputy Cortez's body camera. The search for Chelsea really begins at this point, but I am not going to focus heavily on the details of that search for this video. If you would like to get all of those details, I suggest you watch my previous video on Chelsea Grimm. On October 6th, there was a reported sighting of Chelsea in Phoenix at a restaurant called Dos Pink Tacos. The owner there recalled a woman who looked like Chelsea came in carrying a bearded dragon whose name was Rosie, and she was also with another girl who was quite shy. The owner talked to this woman who might have been Chelsea, but didn't ask many pertinent questions at the time because she didn't actually learn that Chelsea Grimm was missing until later. If you watched my first video, you'll know that the Coconino County case file basically leaves this sighting as a cliffhanger. We don't know if they ever did enough follow-up to validate or invalidate it. I have received some information that indicates that this sighting was double-checked and it turned out that this wasn't Chelsea. I wanted to be sure though, so I reached out to one of the former owners of Dos Pink Tacos, a woman named Brittany, and she never got back to me. And I'm not really one to pester witnesses, so I kind of let it go. But I am leaning towards this sighting being irrelevant, and just one among many sightings of a woman with a lizard that were reported after the disappearance hit the news. In early 2025, Coconino County subpoenaed Chelsea's phone records from Apple to see if her cell phone had ever been reactivated after the disappearance. In April of 2025, authorities received the information they were looking for. Their reports indicate that investigators received a link to download the information, which was set to expire in 90 days. The county attorney's office forwarded the link on the 90th day. So, a good example of interagency communication right there. Anyway, detectives got this information from Apple, but they weren't well versed in interpreting what they were looking at, so they couldn't make any definitive conclusions. Instead, they made plans to find an expert who could interpret the phone records. Also in April, CCSO investigators questioned a woman named Sarah in relation to Chelsea's disappearance. Sarah was a former chief of Coconino County Probation, and on October 24, 2023, she posted a strange and ominous message to her Facebook. The message alludes to a man named Jordan making Chelsea disappear, and also that Williams PD might be involved. Sarah eventually resigned from her position in 2024 after quite a bit of controversy. It took a long time for investigators to finally question her about her post. When confronted, Sarah said that she remembered making the post, and when she was asked to explain what it meant, she said it was a loaded question. She then rambled for a bit about unrelated stuff before saying she needed to meditate for a minute, and that she would call the investigators back. She later left a voicemail saying that she was high as a kite. Investigators reached out again later, where Sarah told an extensive and convoluted story about how her Facebook message came about. In essence, the message seems to lack any actual relevance to Chelsea's disappearance and is more likely the result of mental illness. In June of 2025, investigators began looking into a Reddit post made in May of 2024. The post made some buzz on the internet back when it happened and came from a user called Embarrassed Plane 4489. In the post, he claims to have killed Chelsea after discovering her in her vehicle on Forest Road 6. He actually goes into much greater detail, but since this is YouTube, that's about as far as I'll go in describing his posts. When the CCSO began looking into the post, they quickly found that the poster was actually from Arizona. They were able to subpoena information from Reddit, which revealed that the poster was a man named Thomas. Still, investigators weren't overly concerned because Thomas sounded mentally ill in his posts, and there was no specific details which hadn't been previously released. Additional research found that Thomas was likely in Florida when Chelsea disappeared, and that he also lacked a vehicle in order to get around. He was eventually interviewed over the phone, where he denied any involvement and stated that he was in Florida at the time. He later provided some time-stamped photographs of his presence in Florida to help back up his claim. He explained the posts he made by saying that he was probably just bored. In August of 2025, after many attempts at finding someone who could interpret the phone records, investigators finally found an Apple engineer who could tell them if Chelsea's phone had been activated after her disappearance. The engineer said that the records showed that Chelsea's physical device had been activated months after her disappearance. So let that sink in. It appears that someone has the phone, and somebody turned that phone on. One thing you may have noticed is that a lot of leads that were generated in the first 6 months of Chelsea's disappearance weren't followed up on until this year. I think this is mainly due to the case changing hands and eventually landing with an investigator who actually wanted to follow these tips to their conclusions. Okay, so that's most of the new information that we're going to cover, but perhaps even more importantly, let's talk about what it all means. The first theory I want to point to here involves the Sinaloa cartel and their activities in this region of Arizona. You can find tons of news articles that discuss members of the cartel robbing trains in Arizona. You can find both articles about incidents and others about cartel members being caught and prosecuted. Many of these incidents have occurred near Seligman, Williams, Kingman, and Perrin. This is right in the region of the southern boundary of the Kaibab, and right in the vicinity where Chelsea disappeared. We have confirmed cartel activity in this region. What they're doing is pulling up to trains when they slow down and cutting the air hoses used in the braking system. This causes the train to make an emergency stop. Once that happens, cartel members converge on the train cars and start stealing the merchandise that the train carries. This can be anything from designer goods, power tools, electronics, etc. Basically anything of value that can later be resold online for profit. I suppose it makes sense. Where's the best place to do these train robberies? Really rural areas where there is a small chance of getting caught. If we look at a map of the BNSF Railroad, you can see that a section of the rail runs straight across Arizona, and this part right here runs right through the Kaibab. In fact, Chelsea's disabled vehicle was only a few miles from these tracks. In my last video, I pondered what the chances were that Chelsea would run into some bad people while in the Kaibab. After learning a lot more about this area, those chances are a lot higher than I initially suspected. One other thing I want to mention, and this is just my opinion, but the picture that the hunters took of the truck that was roaming the area when Chelsea disappeared, this truck, if I had to show a picture of what a cartel truck might look like, it would probably be this. No license plate, blaring music, shooting guns. Just my opinion, though. And you also have the hunters who were glassing the terrain and saw Chelsea's vehicle with 3 to 4 people loading or unloading stuff from it. If that sighting is accurate, then what is that about? One thing I'll point out is that when authorities opened up Chelsea's vehicle, all her stuff was actually quite well organized. When private investigator Steve Fisher got to the car later on, after it had been towed away, the sheriff's office had made a complete mess out of it. So any video that gave the impression that Chelsea's car was a complete mess when it was found is actually quite inaccurate. Sure, there was a lot going on in that car with the decor and whatnot, but when it was found, it was actually carefully packed. If these 3 to 4 guys were the ones who did that, then why were they doing it? The kicker to all of this is that a supposed WhatsApp message was received by Chelsea's family asking for a large amount of money in exchange for Chelsea's whereabouts. Apparently, this happened shortly after she disappeared and the message originated in Mexico. I picked this up after watching Nancy Grace when she interviewed Justin Yentes, the private investigator for the Grimm family. Unfortunately, we don't know a whole lot about this message, just what's been revealed to the media. I guess the sheriff's office and the FBI all downplayed the significance of the message because it could have come from any scumbag fishing for money, and that's a fair point. But when we take all of this information as a whole, we have to ask ourselves, is it possible that Chelsea's disappearance is due to cartel activity? I think so. It's an idea I never even considered when making my first video on this case. If this ransom demand was real, it could possibly be just a single cartel member acting on their own and kind of testing the waters a little bit. I could be completely wrong here, however. It could easily be a scammer or some other kind of opportunist. Normally, a message like this could be pretty easy to dismiss, but it's the cartel activity taking place around the Kaibab that gives it more significance. In the end, we don't know enough about this message to come to any real conclusions about it. And while we're on the topic of bad people in the Kaibab, I also want to mention the nearby community of Kaibab Estates West. This community is very small, rural, and spread out. It's also a high crime area which houses a lot of, for YouTube's sake, let's call them registered S offenders. How many of these offenders live in this area exactly? Well, I was curious as well, so I marked the location of every single one of them living in the Kaibab Estates West. That's quite a few for a small community. Now, it's probably not obvious to anyone that this is the case, because if you check the registry in Arizona and you try to look up offenders in Kaibab Estates West, you get exactly no results, which might lead you to believe that there are no offenders that live out there. But if you put in Ash Fork, the small town to the south, you'll get a good-sized list. Once you plug in those addresses, you'll discover that most of these people actually don't live in Ash Fork. They live in the Kaibab Estates. The same thing holds true when you look up a list in Williams. Some of those on that list live in the Kaibab Estates, while others live in Red Lake on the east side of the Kaibab National Forest. So if we combined all these together, here is what the map looks like. And here is Chelsea's last known location. I think it's safe to say that there might be bad people roaming around this region. There is one other thing that stuck out to me about the Kaibab Estates West. It has come to my attention that these back roads in the Kaibab are frequently used by criminal types coming out of the estates. They'll use these roads to avoid the main highway and also law enforcement. So Chelsea was right in the middle of all of this. When you put these things together, it just increases the odds that foul play could have happened in this case. I mean, you can find quite a few articles discussing incidents of violence coming out of this relatively small and rural community. Now, again, I don't have any direct evidence linking a specific person from the Kaibab Estates to Chelsea's disappearance. It's just something worth noting when we are considering what could have happened to her. So we've developed two avenues through which bad people can be roaming around the Kaibab. Now consider this. We have more reliable sightings of Chelsea Grimm in the few days leading up to her disappearance than I've probably seen in any other missing persons case. We can accurately account for most of her movements for quite some time, mainly because there are so many people driving or walking around this region for hunting season. And then suddenly, it all stops. The last physical sighting of Chelsea Grimm is around 5:30 p.m. on September 30th. Shortly after that, a couple of hunters see her car while glassing the terrain. They don't see Chelsea, but they see 3 to 4 guys around her car moving things around. Whatever happened to Chelsea, it likely happened at this point. She is never seen again by any witness after this point. The problem is, we know nothing about who these guys were. The hunters were asked if they could identify any characteristics of these 3 to 4 men, if they were white, black, Hispanic, but they were too far away to accurately judge any identifying markers. We know that a few things were missing from Chelsea's vehicle. Presumably, she grabbed these things and took them wherever she was going. These things include some leather-bound books she was carrying, her bearded dragon, a plastic jug of water, and a sleeping bag. She also took her ID and keys. In my last video, I accidentally stated that these things were left in her car, so let me correct that right now. Chelsea did take her ID and her keys. She locked her car before leaving. Now, in my opinion, this all points to one thing, that Chelsea was voluntarily leaving her vehicle at whatever point she chose to do so. In fact, it kind of indicates that she thought she was coming back. I can picture no kidnapping situation where the kidnapper tells her, "Grab some of your most precious items before we go." Despite this, I believe we are still looking at indications of foul play. It would be very easy for an evil person to come up and offer Chelsea a ride to safety, and finally she relents and accepts this help. Then she gathers some of her most precious items and goes with the group of unknown people. Obviously, such people never took her anywhere helpful, and in the end, you have a kidnapping or even worse. The question that kept eating at me while I considered this new theory was, why would Chelsea suddenly decide to accept help from someone after denying help so many times from other people? The only possibility that I can think of is that maybe a younger person came along, or a group of younger people. Everyone else Chelsea had encountered was a bit older. It seems possible in this scenario that a group of younger people came along that she could more easily relate to. Maybe they were smoking a little weed or could more readily relate to Chelsea's hippie style. They could have also been especially charismatic. Maybe they convinced Chelsea to get in their vehicle. At this point, I really am starting to believe that someone drove Chelsea out of this area. In my previous video, I was more of the opinion that Chelsea grabbed her things and tried to walk out. But we now have a couple of witnesses who say they saw 3 to 4 people around Chelsea's car right around the time she would have been leaving it. Perhaps even more important than that, someone turned her phone on. If it wasn't Chelsea, then who was it, and why do they have her phone? In the end, it seems to me that there are a lot of avenues where Chelsea could have met with foul play. That doesn't mean that she couldn't have walked off on her own and then passed away somewhere in the Kaibab. There is strong evidence that Chelsea was also having a mental health crisis, and I went over much of that in my previous video, so I can't eliminate the possibility that she just walked off. What is true is that there is a lot of possibilities in this case. It's just that foul play seems to be a lot more possible than I initially thought. Some of the new sightings presented in this video seem to directly point to foul play in my opinion. I mean, 3 to 4 people are seen around Chelsea's vehicle, and after that, she is never seen again. That is something we can't ignore. I don't understand why it was completely omitted from the case file Coconino County gave me. Anyway, as I said at the start of this video, the goal here is to get information out there so that we can generate more tips and have people be on the lookout when in the Kaibab. If you're watching this now and you've been in the Kaibab within the last few years, did you see anything strange? If so, contact authorities. If you've been in this region, do you recall ever seeing this vehicle? If so, contact authorities. But if you've been in the Kaibab and any part of this video jogged any memories you have of being in that region, then by all means tell someone who's investigating this case. Sometimes the smallest details lead to the biggest breaks. I really hope that this video gets out there far and wide, and we can generate renewed interest in this case, which will, hopefully, lead to some kind of conclusion. Both Chelsea and her family deserve that more than anything. Let me know what you think about all this new information in the comments below, and until next time, thanks for watching.